In 1903, Nikola Tesla was building a tower on Long Island that would change human civilization forever. Wardenclyffe Tower was designed to transmit electrical power wirelessly through the Earth's atmosphere to any point on the planet. No wires. No power lines. No meters. Free energy for all of humanity, extracted from the ionosphere and the Earth itself. Tesla had already demonstrated the technology publicly at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. He had proven wireless power transmission worked. The tower was nearly complete. And then J.P. Morgan cut his funding, the project was abandoned, the tower was demolished, and the technology disappeared from history. Official explanations claim Tesla's wireless power was impractical, that the physics didn't work, that the project failed due to technical limitations. But Tesla's own notes, his patents, and eyewitness accounts of successful demonstrations tell a different story. The technology worked. Power was transmitted wirelessly over significant distances. Lights illuminated without connections. Motors ran without wires. The system functioned exactly as Tesla claimed. So why was it destroyed? Why were his papers seized after his death? Why do modern physics textbooks ignore his most revolutionary work? And why does our entire civilization remain dependent on centralized power grids and metered electricity when Tesla proved a century ago that neither was necessary? This documentary uncovers the deliberate suppression of wireless energy technology and the economic forces that ensured humanity would never access free power. Using Tesla's own patents and correspondence, suppressed demonstration records, architectural evidence of global wireless infrastructure, and testimonies from engineers who witnessed the technology's destruction, we expose how industrialists led by J.P. Morgan, Thomas Edison, and energy monopolies systematically erased Tesla's greatest achievement to maintain control over electrical distribution and ensure permanent profit from metered energy consumption. What if Wardenclyffe was not the first wireless power tower but one of many? What if the global network of towers, spires, and architectural antenna structures documented worldwide were all part of a pre-existing wireless energy grid that Tesla was attempting to restore? And what if the suppression wasn't just about stopping one inventor, but about maintaining a controlled collapse, preventing humanity from recovering technology that had powered a previous, more advanced civilization? The evidence is technical, architectural, and testimonial. Tesla's patents describing functional wireless power systems. Photographs of Wardenclyffe showing construction consistent with large-scale energy transmission. Demonstration records from multiple public exhibitions where wireless power worked flawlessly. Correspondence between Tesla and Morgan revealing that funding was withdrawn precisely when success became undeniable. Architectural surveys showing coordinated global network of towers matching Tesla's designs. And modern experiments proving Tesla's principles were scientifically sound. The suppression was economic, not technical. If you've ever wondered why we still use 100-year-old centralized power grid technology, why Tesla died in poverty despite revolutionizing electricity, or why his most important work is conspicuously absent from standard physics education, this investigation will prove that free wireless energy was stolen from humanity by those who profit from scarcity, and the sky itself was claimed as property by forces that could not allow unlimited power to reach the people. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications on all our new videos. Hidden History Nikola Tesla Free Energy Wireless Power Wardenclyffe Tower Suppressed Technology Energy Conspiracy Tesla Conspiracy Atmospheric Electricity Technology Suppression Full script, 90 minutes TDS ready. What if the sky itself once provided unlimited electrical power to anyone who knew how to receive it? What if towers scattered across the globe transmitted energy wirelessly through the atmosphere, requiring no wires, no centralized grids, no metered consumption, no bills? What if this technology was not theoretical but functional, demonstrated publicly, proven to work, and then systematically destroyed by industrialists who realized that free energy meant the end of their control over civilization? In 1903, Nikola Tesla stood at the edge of changing the world. His tower at Wardenclyffe on Long Island was nearly complete. 187 feet tall, with foundations sunk 120 feet into bedrock, designed with mathematical precision to resonate with the Earth's electromagnetic field and transmit electrical power to any point on the planet. Tesla was not experimenting. He was not theorizing. He was building a functional system based on principles he had already demonstrated successfully at the Chicago World's Fair a decade earlier. And then it stopped. Funding was cut. Construction halted. The tower sat incomplete for years before being dynamited and scrapped for materials. Tesla's laboratory burned under suspicious circumstances. His papers were confiscated after his death by government agents. His patents were classified. His greatest achievement was erased from mainstream science, dismissed as the fantasy of an eccentric genius who did not understand the limitations of physics. But Tesla understood physics better than those who suppressed him. He understood that the Earth and its atmosphere form a massive capacitor, that the ionosphere is electrically charged, that currents flow through the planet itself, and that with proper resonance and coupling, this natural energy could be tapped, amplified, and transmitted. He built devices that proved it. He demonstrated them publicly. Lights glowed without wires. Motors ran without connections. Power flowed through the air itself. The technology worked. It was not destroyed because it failed. It was destroyed because it succeeded. Because unlimited free energy cannot be metered, cannot be controlled, cannot be monopolized. Because whoever controls energy controls civilization. And in the early 1900s, as industrial empires consolidated power, the last thing those empires wanted was a technology that would make their centralized grid systems obsolete and their energy monopolies worthless. This is the story of how they stole the sky. How they took what should have been humanity's birthright and claimed it as property. How they erased the greatest electrical discovery in history and condemned civilization to century after century of dependence on wires, meters, and profits extracted from every kilowatt consumed. This is the story of Nikola Tesla's wireless energy system. And once you understand what was taken from us, you can never look at a power line the same way again. Let us begin with what Tesla actually demonstrated, because the evidence of successful wireless power transmission exists despite decades of suppression. At the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, Tesla displayed a system that illuminated phosphorescent bulbs wirelessly. Visitors watched lights glow brightly with no visible power source, no connections, no wires of any kind. The power was transmitted through electromagnetic fields generated by Tesla's apparatus and received by properly tuned bulbs. This was not a trick. This was not induction over short distances using standard transformer principles. The distances involved exceeded what conventional induction could achieve. The efficiency was too high. The effect too dramatic. Tesla was demonstrating longitudinal wave transmission through the Earth itself, using the ground as a conductor and the atmosphere as a return path. His bulbs were not receiving power through air-gap transformer coupling. They were receiving power transmitted through the planet's electrical system. Official records acknowledge the demonstration occurred but downplay its significance. They claimed the effect was minor, the distances short, the practical applications limited. But eyewitness accounts tell a different story. Visitors described entire sections of the electrical exhibit glowing without connections. They reported feeling static electricity in the air, sensing the charged atmosphere, experiencing tingling sensations as they walked through areas where wireless power was being transmitted. Some reported watches and metal objects becoming magnetized. Others described unusual auroral effects around Tesla's apparatus. These are not the effects of a minor demonstration. These are the effects of significant power transmission creating measurable electromagnetic fields. And Tesla was not done. At his Colorado Springs laboratory in 1899, he conducted experiments that proved wireless power transmission on a much larger scale. At Colorado Springs, Tesla built a magnifying transmitter. A tower with a large copper sphere at the top, connected to a massive coil system, grounded through deep metal pipes driven into the earth. When activated, the device generated lightning bolts over 100 feet long. It created thunder that could be heard 15 miles away. It illuminated bulbs placed in the ground up to a mile from the laboratory. And it reportedly caused electrical disturbances so powerful that it knocked out the Colorado Springs power plant, burning out the generator at the El Paso Electric Company. Tesla was not trying to destroy the power plant. He was demonstrating resonance. By tuning his transmitter to match the Earth's natural electromagnetic frequencies, he amplified the effect to the point where massive power could be transmitted through the ground. The bulbs glowing a mile away were not receiving weak signals. They were receiving enough power to glow brightly, to operate normally, as if connected to standard electrical supply. This experiment proved beyond doubt that wireless power transmission was not only possible but practical at scale. Tesla calculated that with a properly designed transmitter, he could send power anywhere on Earth. The planet itself would become the conductor. Any receiver tuned to the correct frequency could extract power from the field. There would be no need for wires, for transmission lines, for substations and transformers. Just transmitters and receivers. A global wireless grid powered by a handful of well-positioned towers. But there was a problem. A terrible problem from the perspective of those who had invested fortunes in centralized electrical infrastructure. Wireless power could not be metered. If energy flowed through the air and ground, available to anyone with a receiver, how could companies charge for consumption? How could monopolies be maintained? How could industrialists control who accessed power and who did not? Free energy meant the end of energy profits. And that was unacceptable. Now we must examine Wardenclyffe, because this is where the suppression began in earnest. After proving his concept at Colorado Springs, Tesla secured funding from J.P. Morgan to build a commercial wireless power station. Morgan was told the facility would transmit messages wirelessly across the Atlantic, competing with Marconi's wireless telegraph. This was partly true. Tesla did intend to include communication capabilities. But the primary purpose of Wardenclyffe was power transmission. Construction began in 1901 on Long Island. The tower was designed to be 187 feet tall, topped with a large copper dome. The foundation was extraordinary. 120 feet deep, with 16 iron pipes driven even deeper into the bedrock to ensure maximum electrical grounding. This was not a communication antenna. Communication requires minimal grounding. This was a power transmission station, designed to inject massive electrical currents into the earth. The architecture of Wardenclyffe matched the principles Tesla had outlined in his patents. The height was calculated based on wavelength resonance with atmospheric electrical layers. The dome size was optimized for capacitive coupling to the ionosphere. The grounding system was engineered to handle enormous current flow. Every element was precisely designed for wireless energy transmission on a global scale. As construction progressed, Tesla began testing the system even before completion. Accounts from Long Island residents describe strange phenomena. Electrical discharges around the tower. Auroral glows visible at night. Reports of tingling sensations and hair standing on end near the facility. Some claimed their electric lights flickered in sync with Tesla's experiments. Others reported watches becoming magnetized or compasses behaving erratically. These effects indicate the tower was functioning. Power was being transmitted. The system was working. And then, in 1906, J.P. Morgan abruptly cut funding. Construction stopped. Tesla desperately sought other investors but found none. The tower sat incomplete and inactive. In 1917, with Tesla unable to pay debts, Wardenclyffe was foreclosed and sold. The tower was dynamited. The dome was scrapped. The foundations were buried. The site was cleared as if nothing had ever existed there. Why did Morgan withdraw support? Official explanations claim Tesla was impractical, that the project was not economically viable, that wireless power transmission was impossible, and Morgan finally realized it. But Tesla's correspondence with Morgan tells a different story. Tesla's letters describe successful tests. They speak of the system functioning as designed. They assure Morgan the technology works and commercial deployment is imminent. Morgan's replies become terse. He demands details about how users would be charged for wireless power. Tesla explains that the system could include metering, that receivers could be designed with payment mechanisms. But the tone of Morgan's questions reveals the real issue. How do you meter what flows freely through the air? How do you prevent people from building their own receivers and accessing power without payment? How do you maintain monopolistic control over something anyone can tap into? The answer is you cannot. And that is why Morgan stopped funding. Not because the technology failed. Because it succeeded too well. Because wireless energy transmission threatened the entire economic structure of the electrical industry. Morgan and his associates had invested billions in centralized power grids. They owned the generators, the transmission lines, the distribution networks. Their wealth depended on metered consumption and controlled access. Wardenclyffe made all of it obsolete. If Tesla had completed his tower, if he had proven wireless power on a commercial scale, the implications would have been catastrophic for energy monopolies. Within years, anyone with basic technical knowledge could build a receiver. Power would flow freely. The centralized grid would become unnecessary. And the fortunes built on controlling electricity would evaporate. So the tower was destroyed. But Wardenclyffe was not the only evidence of wireless energy infrastructure. When we examine global architecture from the late 1800s and early 1900s, strange patterns emerge. Towers and spires that seem overdesigned for their stated purposes. Structures with grounding systems far more extensive than necessary. Buildings with metallic domes positioned at heights matching Tesla's electromagnetic resonance calculations. World's Fair structures. Observatory towers. Early radio antenna installations. Even church spires and cathedral towers show design elements consistent with wireless energy transmission rather than their official functions. Foundations sunk deep into bedrock. Extensive copper or iron grounding networks. Dome structures sized for capacitive coupling. Positioning at locations with favorable geological electrical characteristics. Were these all components of a global wireless energy network? Were architects in the late 1800s building Tesla-style transmitters and receivers without publicly acknowledging their true function? Or were these structures even older, remnants of a previous civilization's energy infrastructure that Tesla was attempting to restore rather than invent? The architectural evidence suggests coordination. Too many towers. Too much similarity in design. Too many shared characteristics that serve no purpose for conventional antenna or observation function but make perfect sense for wireless energy transmission. The global distribution follows patterns that optimize coverage for a planetary grid system. Spacing between major towers creates overlapping transmission zones. Positioning exploits geological features that enhance electrical grounding. This was not random. This was systematic. And it suggests that wireless energy infrastructure was more widespread than official history admits. Perhaps Wardenclyffe was not Tesla's first attempt to build such a system but rather his attempt to rebuild or restore a network that already existed in fragmentary form. Now we must examine the opposition Tesla faced, because understanding who suppressed his work reveals why it was suppressed. Thomas Edison, despite his public reputation as an inventor, was primarily a businessman. His fortune came from controlling electrical patents and infrastructure. He owned power generation facilities. He owned distribution networks. His business model required centralized control and metered consumption. Wireless free energy threatened everything Edison had built. Edison publicly dismissed Tesla's wireless power claims as impossible. He ridiculed the concept in newspapers and trade publications. He used his influence to deny Tesla patents, to block funding, to marginalize Tesla in scientific circles. Edison's opposition was not technical critique. It was economic warfare. He recognized that if Tesla succeeded, Edison's empire would collapse. J.P. Morgan went further. As a financier, Morgan controlled much of the capital that funded electrical infrastructure development. He had investments in copper mines that supplied wire for power lines. He owned shares in companies that manufactured transformers, switchgear, and metering equipment. Wireless power would destroy demand for all of it. Morgan did not just withdraw funding from Tesla. He actively prevented other investors from supporting the work. He spread rumors that Tesla was unstable, impractical, financially irresponsible. He used his influence to ensure no one else would provide the capital needed to complete Wardenclyffe. Then there were the government interests. Centralized power grids offer control. If electricity flows through a grid, authorities can monitor consumption, identify users, shut off supply to specific locations. Wireless power offers none of this. Anyone can receive it. No one can be excluded. There is no central off switch. For governments increasingly interested in surveillance and control, wireless energy represented a threat to authority. Military applications complicated things further. Wireless power transmission requires resonant electromagnetic fields. These fields can be detected. They can be disrupted. They can potentially be weaponized by inducing electrical currents in metal structures or affecting electronic equipment. Military strategists recognized that a global wireless energy network could be vulnerable to sabotage or exploitation. They preferred centralized grids that could be protected and controlled. The combination of industrial opposition, financial suppression, and governmental concerns created an alliance against Tesla's work. It was not a formal conspiracy. It was aligned interests. Edison wanted to preserve his business. Morgan wanted to protect his investments. Government wanted to maintain control. Military wanted to prevent vulnerabilities. All of their objectives were served by ensuring wireless energy never became commercially viable. Tesla fought back. He published papers. He filed patents. He demonstrated his devices publicly whenever possible. But the opposition was overwhelming. He could not secure funding. His laboratories burned under suspicious circumstances, destroying years of work. His patents were tied up in legal challenges. His public reputation was gradually shifted from visionary genius to eccentric dreamer whose ideas did not work. And yet Tesla never stopped insisting the technology was sound. Until his death in 1943, he maintained that wireless power transmission was not only possible but inevitable. He predicted that future generations would rediscover his work and recognize that the suppression had been economic, not technical. His final writings express frustration that humanity had been denied the benefits of free energy for the sake of monopolistic profit. After Tesla's death, government agents immediately raided his apartment. They confiscated his papers, his notes, his experimental records. Official explanations claimed this was for national security, that Tesla's work on directed energy weapons made his research sensitive. But the seized materials included everything. Not just weapons research but all his work on wireless power, on resonance, on atmospheric electricity. The entire body of his most revolutionary discoveries was classified and removed from public access. Some materials were eventually released decades later. But key documents remain classified even today. Patents that Tesla filed were never granted, held in bureaucratic limbo or rejected on dubious technical grounds. Attempts by later researchers to replicate Tesla's wireless power experiments were discouraged, defunded, or shut down. The suppression continued long after Tesla's death because the economic incentives to maintain centralized metered power systems remained. Modern physics textbooks barely mention Tesla's wireless energy work. When they do, it is framed as an interesting but impractical idea that violated principles of energy conservation or electromagnetic theory. Yet Tesla's published work demonstrates deep understanding of Maxwell's equations and electromagnetic principles. His designs are technically sound. Independent researchers who have built scaled-down replicas of Tesla's coils and transmitters report that the systems function as he described. The power transmits wirelessly. The resonance effects are measurable. The technology works. So why does mainstream science ignore or dismiss it? Because acknowledging that Tesla was right would require admitting that wireless energy was suppressed for a century not because it was impossible but because it was too possible. It would require confronting the fact that humanity has been forced to pay for metered electricity when free wireless power could have been available for generations. It would require questioning the entire energy infrastructure that currently generates trillions in annual revenue for utilities, grid operators, and energy conglomerates. The silence around Tesla's work is not scientific consensus about its invalidity. It is institutional protection of economic interests that profit from the status quo. And that suppression continues today in how wireless energy research is funded, published, and discussed in academic and commercial contexts. When we assemble the evidence, the successful demonstrations Tesla performed repeatedly, the functional design of Wardenclyffe consistent with his technical descriptions, the coordinated opposition from industrial and financial powers, the classification of his papers after death, the architectural evidence of similar structures worldwide, a coherent picture emerges. Wireless energy transmission was not Tesla's failed dream. It was a successful technology that threatened the economic foundation of industrial civilization and was therefore systematically destroyed. Tesla did not invent wireless power. He discovered principles that already existed in nature and engineered systems to exploit them. The Earth and its atmosphere naturally form an electrical system. The ionosphere is charged by solar radiation. Currents flow through the planet. Electromagnetic fields permeate the environment. Tesla simply understood how to tap into this existing system and amplify it for practical use. But there is a deeper question. Was Tesla truly the first to discover these principles? Or was he recovering knowledge that had been lost? The architectural evidence suggests that structures designed for wireless energy transmission existed before Tesla's documented work. The sophistication of global tower networks implies coordinated planning beyond what one individual could achieve in a single lifetime. The rapid construction of facilities like Wardenclyffe using techniques that seem advanced for their era suggests builders had prior experience, or knowledge. What if wireless energy was not a new invention but a restoration? What if a previous more advanced civilization had powered itself through atmospheric electricity using a global network of transmitters and receivers? What if that civilization fell in some catastrophe, leaving behind ruins and fragmentary knowledge? And what if Tesla, through his unique genius and his access to suppressed archives or recovered texts, rediscovered the principles and attempted to rebuild the system? This would explain why his designs appeared so fully formed, why Wardenclyffe was built with such precision on the first attempt, why similar structures existed worldwide before Tesla supposedly invented the concept. He was not inventing. He was remembering. Or rather, he was recovering deliberately suppressed knowledge that those in power recognized and immediately moved to suppress again. The catastrophe that destroyed the previous wireless energy network may have been the same event that created the resets we see evidence for throughout the 1800s. A global disruption that buried cities, scattered populations, and destroyed infrastructure. When survivors rebuilt, they faced a choice. Restore the old wireless energy system or create a new centralized one that could be controlled and monetized. The evidence suggests the choice was made to implement control, to establish energy monopolies, to ensure that power would be metered, sold, and used as a mechanism of economic and political dominance. Tesla represented a threat to this controlled system. He threatened to restore what had been deliberately dismantled. His work represented not innovation but recovery. And that is why the opposition was so absolute, so coordinated, so vicious. The industrial powers were not defending their economic interests against a new technology. They were defending their control against the restoration of an old one that would end their monopoly forever. What could cause the wireless energy network to fail catastrophically? If the system depended on atmospheric electrical conditions, changes in the ionosphere or geomagnetic field could disrupt operation. If it required specific resonance with the Earth's electromagnetic properties, geological shifts could deturn the system. If it relied on a network of transmitters working in coordination, destruction of critical towers would cascade into complete failure. Historical record shows significant geomagnetic disturbances in the 1800s. Solar activity fluctuations. Unexplained auroral displays at latitudes where they should not occur. Reports of electrical phenomena in the atmosphere that cannot be explained by conventional weather. These could be symptoms of a failing global electromagnetic system, natural variations disrupting artificial resonance, a network collapsing as conditions changed. Or the failure could have been deliberate. If a faction opposed wireless energy, if they preferred centralized control, they could have sabotaged the network. Destroyed key transmitters. Altered critical tower configurations. Introduced interference that disrupted resonance. And then, once the system was disabled, implemented the alternative infrastructure, the wired grids we use today, before knowledge of how to restore the wireless network could spread. The evidence suggests both natural and artificial causes. The atmospheric conditions changed, making wireless transmission more difficult. But the suppression was deliberate, preventing attempts to adapt the technology to new conditions. The combination ensured that wireless energy would be lost, that centralized grids would dominate, and that control over power would rest with monopolies rather than being freely available to all. After wireless energy was suppressed, civilization entered a period of dependence. Every home, every business, every factory became reliant on connection to the grid. Power had to be purchased. Consumption was metered. Bills arrived monthly. Disconnection for non-payment was a constant threat. Electricity, which could flow freely through the air as Tesla had proven, became a commodity controlled by utilities and governments. This was not inevitable. This was a choice. A choice made by those who profited from scarcity rather than abundance. And the effects have been profound. Energy costs consume significant portions of household income. Industries organize around access to grid power. Geopolitics revolves around control of energy resources. Wars are fought over oil and gas. Climate change accelerates due to fossil fuel dependence. All because the alternative, wireless atmospheric electricity, was deliberately suppressed. If Wardenclyffe had been completed, if Tesla's network had been deployed, the 20th century would have unfolded very differently. No power lines marring landscapes. No coal plants burning fossil fuels. No oil dependencies driving international conflict. No metered consumption limiting access to energy. Free power available to all would have enabled technologies and developments we can barely imagine. Scarcity-based economics would have given way to abundance-based systems. The entire structure of industrial civilization would have evolved along a completely different path. But that future was stolen. Deliberately. Systematically. By individuals and institutions that chose profit and control over human advancement. They stole the sky. They claimed ownership of atmospheric electricity that should have been humanity's birthright. They forced us into dependence on systems designed for extraction rather than empowerment. And they did it so thoroughly that most people today do not even know an alternative was possible. We have examined the evidence. Tesla's successful demonstrations of wireless power across distances. The functional design of Wardenclyffe consistent with global energy transmission. The coordinated suppression by industrial and financial powers. The classification of Tesla's work after his death. The architectural evidence of global tower networks. The deliberate choice to implement centralized grids instead of wireless systems. The conclusion is undeniable. Free wireless energy was not impossible. It was achieved, demonstrated, proven to work. And then it was destroyed. Not because the technology failed, but because it succeeded. Not because it was impractical, but because it was too practical, too liberating, too dangerous to those who profit from scarcity and control. We live in a world built on the theft of energy freedom. Every power line is a monument to suppression. Every electricity bill is a payment extracted for what should be free. Every blackout is a reminder that centralized systems can fail or be turned off, while wireless energy would have been resilient and omnipresent. Every geopolitical conflict over energy resources is violence that would be unnecessary if Tesla's vision had been allowed to flourish. But the knowledge was not completely destroyed. Tesla's patents still exist. His published papers can be found. Independent researchers continue to experiment with wireless power transmission. And slowly, gradually, the understanding spreads that what was taken can be reclaimed. That the sky still holds the same electrical potential it always did. That the Earth still resonates with the same frequencies Tesla tapped into. That the principles are sound and the suppression was economic rather than technical. The question is not whether wireless energy can work. Tesla answered that a century ago. The question is whether we will allow it to be restored. Whether we will challenge the economic and political powers that benefit from keeping us dependent on metered centralized systems. Whether we will reclaim what was stolen or continue accepting the controlled scarcity that profits from our ignorance. Tesla's towers may have been destroyed, but the sky remains. The atmosphere still carries electrical potential. The Earth still resonates with electromagnetic frequencies. The system Tesla described is not theoretical. It is natural. It exists whether we exploit it or not. And the only thing preventing us from accessing unlimited free wireless energy is the choice to allow suppression to continue. They stole the sky once. They classified the knowledge, destroyed the infrastructure, marginalized the inventor, and forced humanity into dependence on profitable alternatives. But knowledge cannot be permanently suppressed. Truth resurfaces. And the theft is coming to an end. Because we remember. We question. We examine. We refuse to accept that the current system is the only system, that scarcity is inevitable, that control over energy is natural or necessary. The sky was ours. It still is. And one day, perhaps soon, we will take it back. Not through violence or revolution, but through understanding, through rediscovery, through building what Tesla built and demonstrating once again that free wireless energy is not fantasy but physics. And when that day comes, when towers rise again transmitting power through the atmosphere, when receivers glow with electricity pulled from the air itself, when meters and bills and centralized grids become relics of a darker age, humanity will finally reclaim what should never have been stolen. The sky is waiting. The energy is there. And Tesla's vision endures, patient and immortal, ready for the generation wise enough to recognize that what was suppressed was not failed technology but successful liberation. They stole the sky. But they could not change its nature. And nature, in time, always reclaims what belongs to it.